Good morning. In the name of the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit. Amen. We continue our lecture series with St. Paisios and the family life. And we come to the chapter with respect and love of children for their parents. The respect of children for parents. What a fascinating topic this is. A child, when little, is unable to do anything for themselves. So the parents take care of all their needs, their food, their clothing, and so forth. They help the child out of love, without the child having to work very hard. The child may do some light chores here and there, but in this way, can the child repay his parents for their hard work or for the amount of money they spent on the child while they were raising them? However, as St. Paisios tells us, when the child grows up and doesn't understand what their parents have done for them, it's very hard. And it becomes a grave oversight. A lot of times we shower our children with gifts and materialistic things. And sometimes our children take it for granted that it's owed to them nowadays. And as our children grow older, they expect it. They demand it. They no longer see these things as a gift, but as something of necessity. St. Paisios writes, in the old days, parents would spank their children, and the children would accept it without a second thought. And when I read this, it reminds me of when I was in grammar school, growing up. And the principal, God bless his soul, Dr. Paisios. You would get in trouble, you would be sent to the principal's office, and of course there was the paddle. You got the paddle. And for us, we were related, so he would call my yaya and say, Thea, Sam did this and that. And not only did I get it from the principal, but I got it from my yaya when I got home. A spanking. Nowadays, there's no such thing as spanking a child. Because you spank a child, the next thing you know is a knock on the door, and ECFS is at the door wondering why you put your hand on your child. And St. Paisios tells us, quite often, they didn't even understand why they were being spanked in the first place, even though I knew why I was being spanked. Nowadays, children, full of contradictions, are always asking why. They have no simplicity. They judge every little thing as if it were to pass through a sieve or a strainer. But that is not the way the grace of God comes to us. When a child doesn't consider his father as a father and doesn't accept the guidance of his father, St. Paisios tells us that child is not a normal, legitimate child. If the parents make a comment or remark about their behavior, some children right away say, I'm going to kill myself. What can parents do then? They give in, and in the end, the children destroy themselves mentally. How many times do we hear this? Please, give me the car for tonight. Or give me some money. Give me this. Give me that. If you don't, I'm going to run away. I'm going to jump out the window. I've heard it. Dad, I want. If I don't get it, I'm going to leave. Okay, leave. So I call a bluff. St. Paisios tells us that such behavior will end up destroying the children when they get older. A child must understand that if the parents give, as he writes, them a smack now and then, they're not doing it out of malice, but this little smack is a smack out of love in order to correct the child so that they become better and will be able to rejoice later. When we were little children, he writes, whether our parents caressed us or whether they spanked us, whether they kissed us, we accepted it all. We understood that they did everything for our good. We had a great trust in them. In fact, sometimes my mother would punish the wrong child, for she had no time to hold court. However, the guilty one would be censored by his conscience and would eventually admit that it was his fault, and the other children would be exonerated. St. Paisios had 7 brothers and sisters. In the family, he writes, the young must have respect for the parents and for the older people in general. They should feel that they have a need to show respect, submission, and gratitude towards their elders. I recall many years ago we were at a dinner. And as we were sitting there, I had my father to my right and a friend to my left. And my friend turned to my father and said, you know, Andy. And I turned around out of shock and I looked at him and I said, what did you just call him? He said, Andy. I said, you will address him as Mr. Dimitriou out of respect of his age. Now, my father wasn't that old at the time, maybe 60 years old. But it was the way we were brought up to our elders that we always addressed them as Mr. or Mrs. Even now, as a clergyman, I still address my elders as Mr. and Mrs. because it seems hard to address people by their first names. It was a sign of respect that we were taught at a young age by our parents. And St. Paisios says the same thing. When the young people respect their elders, the elders love the young children. And when the young children are respected by the elders, he says, it becomes a beautiful family atmosphere. And the atmosphere thus creates a beautiful family. And he went on to say, my father would tell me, I want you to obey your older brother. And remember now, St. Paisios had 7 brothers and sisters. And it's funny when I read this, when he says, my father tells me that I want you to obey your older brother, and I remember telling my youngest brother, obedience to your older brothers. And St. Paisios continues, says, we knew that my Father loved us all so. We were bolder with him. We were even more obedient to our older brother, in whom we didn't find the love of our Father. When a husband and a wife have respect for one another, and the children respect the parents, the life in the family is peaceful and goes like clockwork. In such a family, the older son would never say to the mother, look here, Mom, never do this again. Or why do you do this and why did you do that? But not even the father speaks to the mother in this manner. The older brother may joke and play around with the younger brother so as to make him happy. But the younger one must not become outspoken of the happiness he feels whenever his brother plays around with him. And I can share with this also. In our family, there were 4 brothers. There were 4 of us, I being the oldest. And there was always that respect that we had for our father and our mother. And now, at the age that I'm at, I can see why my father would get up at 4 o'clock in the morning to go to work in order to provide for us, his 4 sons, so that we would go to school. And he would come home late at times because of the restaurant. And my mother, I remember, for my other brothers, 2 other brothers were born, would always, when I was younger, take me to the beauty shop. Now they call it the hairdresser or whatever, the salon. But my mother, with her sisters, had a beauty shop. My mother was a hairdresser. And I remember growing up, whether it was in the restaurant or in the beauty shop. And it taught us the hard work our parents did to appreciate them even more. Because what they did out of love for the 4 of us. And they taught each of us what hard work meant in order that we can show our sons, our children, what it means to hard work. St. Paisios writes that when he was at the Stomian monastery, and we go to town to buy materials, a little child whose home was on the way to town would come as soon as he saw him and would kiss his hand. As time went on, he became accustomed to this. And he would run to offer his hand for a kiss. And St. Paisios said, I would, of course, kiss it. Afterwards, his parents told me, Father, please do not kiss his hand, because he goes to the priest and he offers his hand. And if they don't kiss it, he begins to cry. And how many times we as clergy, we extend our hands to the little children, and they take our hands and kiss it, and then the little child would turn around and extend their hands to us to kiss their hands. St. Paisios continues to write, the good God has provided that married couples be united with love, and with a love such that both the husband and the wife can even abandon their own parents for the sake of a new union. If this type of love did not exist, they wouldn't be able to create their own family. The purpose of parenthood ends once the children are settled. From that point on, children only owe parents great respect and as much love as parents need. Now, St. Paisios says, I'm not saying that they should not respect and love their parents. What I'm saying is that the new spouses ought to first love one another and then love their parents. They should have such an abundance of love for one another that they can share this overabundance of this love with their parents and grant them all the respect and the gratitude, because it's the love of their parents that brought them up, that taught them how to love their spouses. Their love should be noble, allowing each one to provide as much assistance as possible to each other's parents. In other words, I loved my in-laws as much as I loved my own parents. And my presbytera loves my parents just as much as hers. The husband should love his wife far more than his mother or any other loved and related person, for this greatly helps the harmony of the family. His love for his parents should be conveyed through his wife. The same thing, of course, should be done by his wife. I know of couples who experience difficulties at the beginning of their marriages because the wife or the husband loves the mother excessively. And this usually stems from the philotimo they have. They feel great gratitude for their mother. With time, however, as the couple bonds even more closely, this will not be a problem. It wouldn't be normal for a couple to so love one another from the start that their love would replace the love of their mother. When the husband respects his parents, this is to his honor, as it is also an honor for the wife to respect and love her mother-in-law. For she gave birth to her husband. She raised him, and now that he is an adult, she, meaning the wife, he writes, finds delight with her husband. And all these things, when seen by the children, speak silently, but also powerfully to the souls of the children. And when the mother sees her son married, she feels just like an older child feels upon seeing a young sibling in the arms of the mother. For before she found great consolation in his love for her, and seniors tend to become like children again. You see, if one doesn't cut away passions while young, then as one matures, the self-will is weakened and the passions increase. But a daughter-in-law, St. Paisios tells us, must not be misunderstood in this. If she is taking care of her aged mother-in-law, she should practice a little patience and not lose the wages she is accumulating by offering her assistance. If she now serves her mother-in-law with patience, later, he tells us, when the hardship passes, she will rejoice for the good she has offered. Naturally, the mother-in-law must love her daughter-in-law as her own daughter. My grandmother, my father's mother, loved my mother more than my father. And when my brothers got married, the neighborhood women said, "Wait till the daughter-in-laws come." And my mother would say to them, "Why do you say that?" My mother-in-law loves me more than her daughter, St. Paisios wrote. And he continued, "Why should I not love my daughter-in-laws in the same way?" And in fact, she too loved them as her own daughters. And I see this with my mother and her daughter-in-laws, the way she treats them with love and respect. And then I see the respect that the daughter-in-laws treat my mother. And I always tell my wife and my sister-in-laws, I said, "Hey, make sure you treat my mother with respect. It's an Italian thing." But we see this in our family, that the daughter-in-laws, even with my cousins, the way they treat my aunts, their wives, because of the respect and love that they have for their children. And as St. Paisios says, the mothers raised their sons and gave their sons to these women. And it's out of respect and love that these daughters, or daughter-in-laws, now show to the mother-in-laws and help. I was blessed, and I'll conclude with this today. When we moved back to Illinois from Indiana, we lived for some years and then decided to have our in-laws live with us. And I was blessed to have my father-in-law live with us and my mother-in-law. And the love I saw between a father and a daughter is so great. But the love between a mother-in-law and a son-in-law I experienced was so great. Because you can't put it in words. The love I had for my mother-in-law, even when she fell ill. But before that, we would have competitions. Who was the better cook and the better gardener? And I tell you, we would garden together, have a cook-off together, who made the better lasagna. Of course, I made the better lasagna. But nonetheless, this is what St. Paisios was talking about. And I felt it firsthand. Because when you lose them, there's that hole that's missing in your heart. And I still have my parents. And I know that hole one day will be even greater when God calls my parents home. So this is what St. Paisios talks about. The love and respect that we should have for our parents, for all they have done for us, from the time we are born till the time we leave the house. And I always say, cut the umbilical cords, sometimes to parents, not to smother the children, but let them go off. Let them go on their own. But never let them be far from your reach. May our Lord bless us and watch over us. For those of us who have lost parents who are in heaven, may their memories be eternal. And for those whose parents we still have, may we hold them close to our hearts. And may we watch over them and treat them with respect, so our children will know how to treat their elders with respect. Amen.